Hi, I'm Kenji, a professional chef. Today, I'll prepare a unique Brandoni-style Milanesa, the one from the series About Nothing. We incorporate the chopped garlic and parsley with the breadcrumbs. It's not in the egg. I'll test its quality. Alternatively, I'll make a standard Milanesa with garlic and parsley in the egg for comparison. Additionally, we'll prepare some good mashed potatoes to go with it, just like in the series. The Milanesa always with loin. The loin is a prime, lean cut with little fat. I'm starting with a corded center loin. First, I remove the cord and separate muscle along with excess fat. What remains is the center and head of the loin. The series only uses the center, so I'll strictly follow that. I'll also remove the aponeurosis, a connective tissue. Finally, I'll flip the loin and slice downwards, like a fish, without completely severing it with the knife. I remove the head and I have the loin partially clean and I keep removing it. Regarding this cut of meat for Milanesa, I think one of the things we are going to try to see how it really turns out, but one of the peculiarities and benefits it has is that it will definitely be tender. The loin is an extremely tender cut of the cow. I think one of the things that maybe goes against it is that it doesn't have much intrinsic fat. As we mentioned before, it's a bit dry in some way. Peletto never. Very dry. For me, it's just as fatty and hydrated as the loin. If the butcher sells you shoulder, he's underestimating you. If he offers you sirloin steak, he's a snob. That's up to interpretation. On the other hand, the rump never fails. I believe the rump is excellent. It's a classic cut for breaded steak, providing a balance with ample fat within the muscle for moisture while remaining tender. The important thing here is to remove the fat well. In the series, what they use is the whole loin, removing the head. They use the whole loin, so suddenly they have 35 centimeters of meat. We'll respect the meat cut, slicing it similarly, but the breaded steak will end up slightly smaller. In the series, one distinct feature is the garlic and parsley usage and the loin meat cut, which is typically sliced in a specific way. If the loin is cut this way, it goes against the grain. In the series, what they do is they grab it, butterfly it, cut it in half without going all the way through. Once they have this, they cut it butterfly again, that is, from the center, they grab the half and open it again. Be very careful with this. Do it slowly, precisely to avoid cutting the loin, to avoid breaking it. Now I turn it over and do the same thing on this side again. Notice it's thinner here and thick here, as I've yet to have it again. With the knife parallel to the meat, I'm opening it back up. In the series, he leaves a pretty thick Milanesa, so we're going to respect that. What you see is that they hit it a bit with the fist. You can suddenly use a hammer. What I'm going to do here is to thin it out a bit more, because the loin is still a bit thick, and even though it's a thick Milanesa and it's good to feel the meat, feel the cut, I'm going to thin it out a little bit more so that it's at least even and the cooking is even. A unique aspect of the series is that Narda Lipes oversaw the culinary direction. To perfect the Milanesa we're now recreating, she conducted 40 tests. We already possess a Milanesa of the same thickness and similar length as in the series. I'll now have it for comparison. I'll make one half with egg, garlic, and parsley, while the other will have garlic and parsley in breadcrumbs. We already have the cutlet cut. What we are going to do now is, we are going to break some eggs into a bowl. What the series says is that the salt and pepper go in the eggs. One often to make a cutlet salts the meat, but in this case, the salt and pepper go here, in this liquid medium. We'll add one more egg, making it 3. We break up the mixture a bit. You don't need to beat it a lot, but it does need to be incorporated into the yolk. With what is the white salt and pepper, think that the salt we are going to put has to be enough for the meat to be just right. Then salt and freshly ground black pepper and freshly ground pepper, a heaping tablespoon of mustard for 3 eggs. We are going to put a generous tablespoon, as he says, of Dijon mustard. This is a super tasty, intense mustard that has a nasal spice. It's a spice that stings upwards, similar to wasabi or any radish. We ensure the mustard is thoroughly mixed into the egg, making sure the meat gets a uniform taste when it's processed. Finally, we'll cut the garlic and parsley. As I told you, we're going to put some of it in the breadcrumbs and some in the eggs later to try it in a more traditional way. There's no secret with the garlic and parsley, they're finely chopped. First, We'll mix garlic and parsley into the breadcrumbs as per the series. We set aside this mixture for later to blend it with the egg. With the loin ready, we start the breading process. The key sequence is bread, egg, bread. Regardless of the ingredients you choose to use, remember the breading process involves alternating layers from wet to dry. This implies that the meat which I touch is wet. If I put the meat in the egg, it'll slip. The egg can't fully hold it. Firstly, I want to dry the meat. Press a little bit. I'm not looking for a perfect breading here, I insist. What I'm trying to do is remove all the moisture from the meat. And when I pass it through the egg is going to absorb a lot more because it's dry. Don't forget the egg includes salt, pepper, and Dijon mustard. And now, the real breading with the breadcrumbs. Take the time to press well, to give a few taps. These taps ensure that the breadcrumbs get into any fold of meat, so that when we fry it, it stays much more even and doesn't fall apart, that the breading layer doesn't come off. The series doesn't stress this, but for any breading or Milanesa, you hydrate the breadcrumbs for better adhesion. I'll transfer it to a board for better flattening, using some leftover breadcrumbs. That's it. Brandoni's Milanesa is ready. Now let's prepare another traditional Milanesa. Typically, we mix and coat the meat with breadcrumbs. Always use breadcrumbs or flour specifically to dry the meat. After passing it through the egg, it absorbs better. Then, return it to the breadcrumbs. Here's the series Milanesa with garlic and parsley in the breadcrumbs, and a classic Milanesa with the seasonings in the egg. We've got a hot oil pan ready for frying. First, we'll fry the series Milanesa. Ensure the oil is hot. It has breadcrumbs, and as it's added, it immediately bubbles up. Depending on the thickness of the Milanesa, it's ready to be fried. Extend the cooking time if it's browning too quickly, and lower the oil temperature to ensure the meat is fully cooked. Once the Milanesa is golden, remove it and place it on a board with absorbent paper to soak up residual oil. Then fry the traditional Milanesa with garlic and parsley in the egg in the same pan and dry it similarly. After preparing the Milanesa, I will make the series-inspired mashed potatoes using the mentioned ingredients: milk, butter, and not nutmeg. Let's begin with the potato. I've boiled water, peeled a potato. I'm going to cut it. The important thing is that it has an even cut. It'll take more time if I do it all at once. I boil water, add salt, and put in the potato. I cover it approximately at this cut. It's about 15 minutes, but base it on when it's cooked. I don't fully cover it to prevent overflow, as the steam could cause excessive boiling and water spillage. Now, we'll modify the mashed potato recipe to enhance it. Usually butter is melted, milk and salt are added, or cream can be used. I'll toast the butter to give it a unique and interesting flavor. I have around 150 grams of butter for a kilo of mash. I wanted to have a decent amount of butter. In the Brandoni series, one of the few criticisms he makes about the dish is its generous butter content. I'm melting it. The butter having a good amount of butter. I'm melting it. The butter is going to start melting. Once it's melted, it's going to generate a foam on top. That foam is going to start bubbling. And once the foam starts to go down, that's when the butter starts to toast. That's the time to add the milk. The line is very thin from toasting to burning. If it burns, you unfortunately have to throw it away and start over. So let's be very aware of that. Well, that starts to bubble the butter. That starts to bubble the butter. At the crucial moment before it burns, I need to be attentive and add milk. The milk will halt the cooking process. Do you see what's left at the bottom of all this? Residue is non-ace butter. It's toasted butter. It's super tasty, super tasty for a fish, for a meat, for a mashed potato. We add about 100 cubic centimeters more milk. That's going to depend on how light or thick you want the mash. At this point, I turn off the heat freshly ground pepper. A little salt. Keep in mind the salt you use to cook the potato. Adding is preferable to removing. Crucially, nutmeg isn't in any mashed potato. In this case, I add half a teaspoon. If necessary, I will add a little more. Mix done, fire off. I have all I need for the mashed potatoes. When the potato is done, I strain, mash, and slowly add this mix. We already have the mashed potatoes ready. Remember that it's always important to mash the potatoes when they're hot to reduce the amount of lumps. We're going to add it little by little. At first it seems like a lot, but trust in the absorption power of the potato, keep mixing, and maybe now you can see the little spots of brown butter better. We continue adding liquid as it's incorporated. For me, I seek consistency, creaminess, and a not too thick texture. And always keep in mind that if you're going to make mashed potatoes and then you're going to reheat it, always reserve some of the liquid, the butter, the milk, or whatever you use to moisten the mash. To rejuvenate and warm it up, it's always beneficial to add a bit more. We taste it to check the seasoning and ingredient balance. The toasted butter is really good and super delicious. I'll add a bit more salt and some pepper. Here's my version of mashed potatoes. We already have the 2 breaded cutlets on the board. This is Brandoni's breaded cutlet from the series, and this is the traditional one. Visually, what I can already see is that the garlic and parsley are like... The garlic and parsley on Brandoni's breaded cutlet tastes like it's fried. It's like it's toasted. It has... In fact, I believe it emits a stronger smell. It's harder for me to visualize the traditional Milanesa, where garlic and parsley are in the egg. I don't know how it's going to taste, but I find it harder to visualize because it's right inside the egg. Over here are the mashed potatoes we prepared earlier. The unique distinction was that we browned the butter slightly before adding the mashed potatoes. We'll add some lemon, like in the series. One fascinating detail not mentioned in the series that I loved is that they don't just have lemons, they have it specifically termed as lemon in clothes. They have it inside a tweel with a string tied. And what it does exactly is that this tweel, at the moment of squeezing and any seed that could fall, falls inside what is this cloth. This is commonly found in 5-star hotels, quite intriguing. They put a little bit of lemon, only on the tip. Try a traditional Milanesa. The differences I find between the 2 Milanesas is this one, the 2 Milanesas series, has garlic and parsley in the breadcrumbs. The garlic and parsley have a stronger presence, as if they're fried in oil, giving off more aroma and a toasted garlic taste. The other Milanesa, where the garlic and parsley are in the egg, has a more steamed taste. Despite being coated in breadcrumbs, it cooks within layers, and its flavor is not as pronounced. If forced to pick, I'd prefer the series Milanesa as it seems unique to me. I think that the toasted garlic and parsley in the oil suits it super well. Let's try the mashed potatoes. Mashed potatoes pair well with breaded steak. I made the improvements Brandoni requested in the series by adding more butter, and my personal touch was to brown the butter before adding the milk, nutmeg, and salt. I'm not the only one deciding. I'll invite Juan, the editor, to taste the breaded steak. Ready to visit, Juan? I'll leave you here. What an honor. You're going to try the breaded steak. What a sacrifice. While I cut the other one for you. And which one do you prefer? I'll stick with the traditional one. I don't know what I felt. I felt a different taste in the texture of the Milanesa. But anyway, the mashed potatoes are necessary to finish the Milanesa. The mashed potatoes are excellent. It's necessary to finish the Milanesa. It's excellent. Thank you very much. Please, thank you.